Allen Lund Company looks forward to seeing you at Matt's in March.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
What is factoring? When should a trucker use it? And what are the potential upsides and downsides? These days, many truckers who are on their own authority are using factoring services, but many of those same truckers are experiencing some significant problems that you likely want to avoid. I'll get some insight into the topic and some advice from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Also on today's program, a coalition in North Texas is working on a project designed to make a local intermodal port far more efficient in terms of the movement of freight and the vehicles that carry it. It's the latest version of a so-called smart port, and truckers could benefit greatly. I'll get the details from Nick Conan of the development company Hillwood and Michael Morris of the North Central Texas Council of Governments. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. There are new developments in President Trump's proposed tariffs against Canada, Mexico, and China. Just hours after hitting pause on his tariff threats against Mexico on Monday, he did the same thing with Canada. The 30-day pause allows for negotiations over drug smuggling and illegal immigration. A 10% tariff on Chinese-made goods is still going into effect, however. In response, China has said it will put a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products imported from the U.S. and a 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and some vehicles. It's worth noting that American companies and American consumers would ultimately pay for the proposed tariffs on foreign goods entering the U.S. if they go into effect. That's because it's the importers who pay the tariffs, not the exporting country, and those additional costs are then passed on to consumers. The possible trade war roiled the markets on Monday. The trucking industry has also expressed concerns. In a statement, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association said the tariffs could make the road to recovery from a prolonged freight recession even longer. However, the association also noted it is too soon to determine what effect they will have. A recent memorandum from the U.S. Department of Transportation provided an update to its policies, including how grants will be prioritized. The memo, signed by Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, said decisions on grants, policies, and rules will be based on sound economic principles and analysis, supported by cost-benefit analysis and data. For example, the Secretary wrote that calculating the social cost of carbon is marked by, quote, logical deficiencies, a poor basis in empirical science, politicization, and the absence of a foundation in legislation, end quote. Secretary Duffy also said the DOT under his watch would prioritize grants, loans, and contracts in communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. The Department of Transportation also plans to prohibit recipients of DOT assistance from imposing vaccine and mask mandates and potentially withhold funding if local authorities do not cooperate with federal immigration enforcement efforts. The memo was set to take effect immediately. Time now for our weekly check on diesel prices. The Energy Information Administration says last week's average settled in at $3.66 a gallon, the same as the week before. The average has been swinging back and forth in recent weeks. Overall, since the start of 2025, the cost of diesel has gone up by just under a dime. Meanwhile, Tuesday morning's average on the ProMiles.com survey mirrored the EIA report. It came in at $3.64 a gallon, unchanged from the same day last week. OOIDA Executive Vice President Louis Pugh has been picked to serve on an advisory board tasked with considering a national vehicle per mile user fee pilot program. Pugh will represent the trucking industry as one of 15 members on the Federal System Funding Alternative Advisory Board. OOIDA has traditionally opposed vehicle per mile fees that single out truckers. OOIDA said that Pugh will work to relay the unique challenges and needs of motor carriers as a pilot program is developed. Being on the board will allow Pugh the opportunity to convey the views of American truckers to a wide variety of government officials, transportation experts, and researchers. The FHWA Advisory Board is scheduled to last for 2 years, after which time it will provide recommendations to the Secretary of Transportation. Pennsylvania is bracing for a winter storm. A mix of snow, sleet, and freezing rain is expected to hit the state on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. In response, PennDOT is restricting all commercial vehicles from traveling on several interstates in the state starting at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. PennDOT says the restrictions will stay in place until further notice. For the latest updates, head to 511pa.com. New details tonight about efforts to rebuild the Brent Spence Bridge. Kentucky officials are expressing concern about the $1.6 billion of federal funding that was previously allocated for the project. The mayor of Covington, Kentucky, sounded the alarm last week after the Trump administration issued a federal funding freeze that has since been rescinded. In a statement, Covington Mayor Ron Washington said the city is confident that the White House will recognize the value and urgency of the project and realize that they can't afford even the shortest delay. Any delay, officials say, would cause the total cost of the $3.6 billion project to rise. State officials have said that the Brent Spence Bridge, which carries Interstate 71 and 75 over the Ohio River between Covington and Cincinnati, has exceeded its capacity of 80,000 vehicles per day and become a bottleneck along a critical north-south corridor. A new bill in Colorado seeks to pump the brakes on the rise of autonomous trucks. The bill is called Automated Driving System Commercial Motor Vehicle. In short, it would require that a CDL holder be inside the cab of any self-driving commercial vehicle in Colorado to monitor its driving and intervene if necessary. It also establishes fines for companies that don't follow the law, $1,000 for a first offense, $2,000 for a second offense, and a fine that doubles for every offense after that. If the bill sounds familiar, that's because similar legislation has been introduced in other states like California and New York. The Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission has issued a reminder for watercraft haulers. The commission has a national call before you haul program, which allows any trucker hauling watercraft to a western state to call a toll-free number, make arrangements to have their watercraft inspected, and, if need be, decontaminated at no cost to the trucker. The idea is to make it easier for truckers to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. For more information, go to the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission website dedicated to the toll-free number. We've got a link at landlinenow.com. A highly rated truck stop in eastern Kansas is undergoing some changes. Bird's Travel Plaza in Wellsville opened its doors on Monday under new ownership. Bird's first opened up during the height of COVID in May of 2020 and quickly gained a following in the trucking community. The truck stop was rated the #1 independent truck stop by users of the Trucker Path app in 2022. The former owners haven't said why they sold off the travel stop, but in a statement did express their gratitude to their customers. And finally, Love's has announced a new dining option coming soon to one of its Texas locations. Convenience store Publications is reporting that a Whataburger will open inside of the San Antonio travel stop this summer or early fall. It'll be the first. It's part of Love's expansion plans in 2025. The company said it plans to start construction on 20 new stores this year and remodel 50 existing locations across the United States, adding 1,000 new truck parking spaces in the process. That's Laneline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. If a carrier, shipper, receiver, or broker, or frankly anyone else, tries to coerce you into violating the federal safety regulations, your first action should be to document what happened. Then report that information to FMCSA by calling 1-888-DOT-SAFT or file a complaint online to the National Consumer Complaint Database. Again, the phone number is 1-888-DOT-SAFT or go online to the National Consumer Complaint Database. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the TA Truck Stop in Phoenix, Arizona. That's located at exit 137 on Interstate 10. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, what is factoring, and when should a trucker use it? I'll get some information and advice from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And we'll hear from two officials with the Texas Coalition about efforts to create a so-called smart port in the Fort Worth area. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us through a short commercial break. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Is using a factoring service a good idea? When should truckers consider using one, and what are the potential pitfalls? Here to offer some advice on that and more are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, how are you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Good to be here, Mark, as always.
Glad to have you here, and obviously this is a topic that is affecting a lot of people out there. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, I always think of those people that are fairly new to the industry or haven't yet made the leap from working for a carrier to being a carrier, or even leasing on. So for those folks, what is factoring? Give us kind of the Reader's Digest definition.
Well, factoring is essentially when you take your accounts receivable that will probably be on a 30 to 45-day pay cycle, and another company buys those from you for a few percentage points. They will buy those and then get you the money in a quicker time frame, usually within a few days or a week, depending on your arrangements. And it's just getting your money into your hands quicker, but everything's at a cost.
Why do people use this? I mean, obviously there's a reason they are. I know we've talked before about, how it's important for people to have enough money saved aside to really start a carrier. Is it just a matter of people not doing that?
Well, it's a matter of people not doing that, but it's really bigger than that. There are a lot of expenses in trucking, and to have enough money saved aside to start a trucking company and to get going, it's difficult. So a lot of folks, they're looking for a little easier way to do that rather than save all that money, because, like I said, that is difficult at times. And that's to employ a factoring service or some place to buy your receivables and get you the cash up front. Here at the association, we are aware many small carriers factor. Sometimes it's inevitable that you will have to, but you don't want it to be an integral forever part of your business. I mean, if you have to do that at the beginning, to get things flowing, that's one thing. But you just want to look for an out, because that's 3 to 5, 8% of your income that is gone right off the top of the bat.
Well, and you mentioned in there that it's a good thing at the beginning, but we've talked about before the fact that once you're in, it's a little like the mafia. Once you're in, it's really hard to get out. Why is that?
Well, because your positioning on that lien is valuable. They don't want to release that right away, or they'll try to sweet talk you or prolong the issue to where that is. You have to understand that these factoring companies can see you coming, because if you're asking them, it's similar to a lease purchase. It's not necessarily predatory, but they see you coming from a mile away. If you're interested in that, they know why. Most people, when they get into the industry, can't wait 30 days, 45 days to get paid. That's where we see most of that come from. A lot of new carriers get into that. But, places that do this, those contracts are really, those contracts are
They're definitely binding. I mean, you get into these contracts and they are auto-renewing. Many of them, they'll run year to year and they auto-renew, and they've got a very small cancellation window or a window for exit. You've really got to read your contracts, and that's in the compliance department. We talk to people about this all the time. Read the contracts. I know you're a small business person, a truck driver. Contracts are not really your specialty. You need to know what they say, because you sign them, whether you understand them or not, you're bound by them. And factoring agreements there's some tough agreements. I mean, they get you in, they put a UCC, they file a UCC on your business through the Universal Commercial Code, and they have a lien on your business, as Aaron was alluding to earlier. They have a lien on your business where all your accounts receivable must go to them. So know what you're getting into, and there are different factorings. There's factoring that they want to buy every paper that comes through, course, they want to approve it and then buy them. And there are others, there are what's called, say, spot factoring, where you can pick and choose a little bit about what you factor. Those are more far and few between. So know what you're getting into before you get in, because once you're in, it's not easy to get out.
Well, and keep in mind, too, a lot of times you're cross-collateralizing your assets, and you're also sometimes signing over power of attorney. I've seen those in contracts, too. So you're signing up for more than you think. And if things go left, or if there's a reason why you want to get out of the contract and you, for some reason, have a payment discrepancy where you owe them money or have any outstanding balances, that's hurtful. And keep in mind what Tom was saying earlier about that lien against your business. If grandma dies and there's a payment discrepancy, let's say she left you $50,000 and you supposedly owe them $5,000, they get that money first before you get anything. That's how deep it can go.
You mentioned that cross-collateralizing, and I want to explore that a little bit more because as I recall, it involves like if you have a load that you factored, they paid you, but then the shipper doesn't pay them, they basically got a right to take that money out of your next load, right?
That is a form they can do, or they can take it directly out of your bank account.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you want to be careful of. People they get real comfortable with this electronic banking. And some of these contracts that you sign, not only do you give them the ability to put money into your account, but I've seen it stated where if you owe them money, they have every right to take that money out of your account. So, and then cross-collateralization, absolutely. If you have money coming in from a load and they pay you in advance for that load, and for whatever reason, be it a claim, be it a misunderstanding, it doesn't matter, that factoring company doesn't get paid on that, they will want that money back. And that's called the
non-recourse, right?
Thank you. Non-recourse.
Yeah.
I was having problems with that one. The recourse and the non-recourse. And that is one thing that you really need to understand in these contracts, because essentially everything is recourse. Everything does come back on you at some point. They say, hey, this is a non-recourse. We're going to charge you an extra percentage point, and then it'll be non-recourse. Read that contract. It doesn't really come out like that. Essentially, if they don't get paid, they're coming back to you for that money.
Yeah, that factoring company does play your middleman and does, a lot of your back office and invoicing depending on what that contract says. But keep in mind, they're never going to take a loss on your behalf. They're always going to collect that because that percentage you're giving them is not going to offset that $2,000 load they didn't get paid on or more.
Yeah, and a lot of these factoring companies, they have websites that you can go and do a credit check on these brokers, and you better do that, because if you don't do that, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get paid. So, some of these factoring sites, they do offer some benefits that a small carrier can capitalize on, but there's a lot of pitfalls there too. So you've got to know the full, aspect of what they and you are expected to do.
I want to kind of skip back just a little bit here, talking about the UCC, talking about cross-collateralizing. And I'm sure, I know there have been people that thought this. I'm sure there are people thinking it, hearing this now, which is once you are in, how do you get out? Once you are locked into that arrangement?
Well, a lot of times per the contract, you have to sign paperwork and submit that to them, explaining that you want out of the contract, your resignation of that within a certain time frame, and you have to send it certified mail. Sometimes there is a monetary value attached to that too. It could be $1,000, $2,000, could be $200. It will all be dictated in the terms and agreement of that contract. As far as you hold up your end, what happens on their end, I've seen a lot of times people call in and they say, they keep prolonging. They're not answering my call. They're playing, back and forth with me, things of that nature. Another thing you can attempt to do is try, in some states, you can go try to remove it yourself as well. But that notice of assignment's still out with those brokers. So sometimes those brokers are going to want written confirmation from that factoring company that you guys have separated, and getting that, what do they give to you, that,
when you satisfy
that
everything,
letter release,
the UCC release,
the release,
UCC 3.
They want a copy of that UCC 3, And sometimes they want it written from them as well, not just because you got it.
Yeah, and you know that it really comes down to, as we discussed before, read that contract and understand what it says. Don't call the factoring company up and say, "Hey, how do I do this?" or "What does it take to get out?" or something, because you know they're not. There's not a lot of benefit for them to tell you. It's more beneficial for you to read that contract, because you know they may omit something or say, well, you got to send in a letter, but they won't tell you exactly when to send it in. I mean, that's up to you to know. You signed the contract. And if you don't send that letter in right during that little window that you have opportunity for, then they will automatically renew you. And I've seen it over and over again. They'll renew you and say, tough, you're in for a year.
That's a real situation there. When we're talking about factoring, and going back to those truckers that may want to use it, especially newer carriers that don't have a bunch of savings they can rely on, are there alternatives to factoring for those truckers? Is there any other place where they can would a line of credit at a bank work, for example?
It would. That would be something they would have much more control over as well. A line of credit at a bank. There are some brokers that have a quick pay option.
Not all, but some.
And you know it'll still cost you 1% or 2%, but at least that's on a per issue basis. You know, it's these long-term contracts that you get locked into. That's where a lot of the downfall comes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would suggest, read those contracts, but when you're getting into trucking, make sure you have that flow of money coming in to or that savings before you even start. Because we know it takes insurance payments and truck payments, all these other things. And for you to pay to someone to do all your paperwork for you, that kind of takes the onus off of you for being a business owner. And at the end of the day, no one's going to care more about your business than you. So I suggest have a couple grand or 20 grand or whatever the case is, sit to the side. That way you can, outlast that first month and wait for those payments. Learn how to file on a bond if someone's late. Learn how to run your business yourself. That way you don't have to pay someone to help you invoice and run your business. It's all about being a business owner. If you're going to have everyone dictate and do all your permits and everything like that, I don't necessarily suggest maybe you be a business owner in the first place. It's okay sometimes to just be an owner-operator for a carrier or an employee driver.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot
nothing
of times,
wrong with that.
There's a lot of times that we see folks that come in and they want to outsource everything, and it's like, well, why are you going to run a business? I mean, if you're going to outsource it all, there's just not enough money to pay everybody to do your job.
And I think there are things that can be outsourced that maybe it's a good idea, but you got to be picky about that.
You do. You got
to be willing to learn too how to do it. It's okay to have someone do it once or twice, but at some point pick it up yourself. Do some research, ask questions, learn how to do it yourself. That way you're not paying a factoring company for the next 20 years.
I agree.
Hell of a thing there, guys.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate all the information, guys. Thank you very much for joining me, and maybe we'll have you back to talk about this some more sometime.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
I've been talking with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And folks, if you need help, if you need information, if you have questions about this, call Compliance. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you. The phone number to do that is the main number here at OOIDA, 816-229-5791. Again, 816-229-5791. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
A coalition of groups in North Texas is working on a project designed to make a local intermodal port far more efficient in terms of the movement of freight and the vehicles that carry it, and truckers who work at that port could benefit greatly. You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Redding. Welcome back to the program. The project is the latest of the smart ports that we've seen in different parts of the country. In this case, it involves a coalition of groups such as Alliance Texas, the Texas DOT, several Dallas-Fort Worth area city governments, development company Hillwood, the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and more. The target is a 27,000-acre site that includes a number of freight-related facilities, and the goal is simple: to help the movement of freight and help the surface transportation assets involved, such as rail and trucks, get to their load, pick it up, move it, and move on as quickly and efficiently as possible. That potentially should result in far less time for truckers spent waiting to go through the various stages of the process of picking up or dropping off shipments. The project involves technology that will connect the various freight moving operations in that 27,000-acre site, the equivalent of more than 42 square miles. Those operations include a Burlington Northern intermodal freight hub, an industrial airport, and eventually 14 million square feet of warehousing space and a yard for storing shipping containers. And all of that right on Interstate 35, a major north-south freight corridor. Nick Conan of the development company Hillwood offered some detail as to what assets are involved and how the whole thing will work.
If you don't know, Alliance Texas is a 27,000-acre master planned mixed-use development just north of downtown Fort Worth by about 15 minutes along I-35. A portion of that 27,000 acres, call it roughly 2,000, is sandwiched between the Alliance Fort Worth Airport and Industrial Airport and the BNSF Intermodal Facility, which is currently their largest on their network, moving about 1 million containers a year. And so what we were doing is enhancing, again, what we have had as an ongoing effort, which is, again, as I mentioned, the Mobility Innovation Zone, focusing on layering technology across the totality of that development, whether it be inside the warehouse, outside the warehouse, and along the roadway systems that connect it all. Given the nature of that 2,000 acres, the proximity, again, to the airport and the intermodal facility, it will house, when it's all fully built out, about round numbers 14 million square feet of warehousing space. And it will be the core of what we're calling Smart Port, which will involve all elements of surface transportation, technology to augment that surface transportation, as well as any other technology and the environment to, again, support it inside the warehouse and beyond, connecting the totality of the operations that go on, again, inside that warehouse and the movement outside of the warehouse, moving the goods that are either coming into or outlet.
One of the key parts of the plan is using technology to determine in real time where a particular truck, shipment, or shipping container is, where it needs to go, and when it can be moved, all of which would mean truckers spending far less time waiting in lines for various parts of the process. And the means of tracking where both the trucks and shipping containers are, as well as spotting potential problems around the complex, involves what Michael Morris of the North Central Texas Council of Governments calls edge computing. Essentially, that means cameras that record at a number of locations in the overall complex and feed that information to computers that can recognize what they're seeing and communicate that information to those who can act on it.
Edge computing being computer systems watching video and being able to communicate. We have a pallet in the middle of the road, send a crew immediately where the computer can identify it as a pallet and the right person is responding. Then there's something that weighs 6,000 pounds and the wrong vehicle was sent with the wrong equipment. And now you have a 2-hour delay that should have taken no time at all. All the way to the edge computing that'll detect, oh, that's Bobby again, the single operator from here. We know what he's picking up. He comes every Tuesday. And I think artificial intelligence will build this information system over time. We kind of know where Bobby likes to go and pick up his container, and we know which exit he likes on his way out as part of that process.
Other technology used to increase efficiency in freight movement could include connecting trucks to various traffic signals. A similar system is in use around Dallas, and it's had some success in preventing the start and stop pattern that trucks often experience in urban areas by keeping lights green when trucks are moving through. But there is more than that involved here, as Nick Conan of Hillwood explained.
Some of the first is going to be, very, I'd say, basic, but it would include the enhancement, by way of example, of any signalized intersections, some of which are being avoided, of course, by these direct connectors that Michael greatly described along the path of travel that we're, enhancing. But any other signalization that would be involved along that would have technology that would communicate directly to the number of freight vehicles moving through those intersections to, accommodate the number of moves and time the signals in such a way that allows for a greater efficiency of the utility of those intersections. So you're enhancing and reducing the amount of congestion with the surface transportation element, which is the direct connectors, and then further along the route and, keeping that enhancement going by connecting the vehicles to the signals with which it has to flow through, getting to their end destination. That would be example one. Two would be along the road technology that would, in basic terms, create a 3D digital twin of the roadway system, capturing where all these vehicles are in real time, and then being able to transmit any of that data in a future state, to users who are out and in the SmartPort area. So if you're a customer and you have, you're expecting a truck delivery and you want to know in real time where that vehicle may be, you could get and watch through, again, the technology along the roadway where that vehicle is at. By way of extension, the intermodal facility at the rail facility would be able to do the same thing. There's also already, mechanisms that the rail facility and BNSF has that's transmitted to customers. So if you are an intermodal user, you would be getting that information from BNSF already, and then this would just further enhance and expand your purview of where these containers may be, which we hope, of course, will grow over time across the totality of Alliance, just this area being the initial start of that.
Michael Morris says that part of what will make that work is putting the truck at the center of the process and using the technology involved to do that.
We think the priority in this part of the region needs to move from the car to the truck, and the truck has priority. The truck has priority, and the conversation we'll have with big truck companies and individual operators, we won't do it on day one. Hey, if you're there at 10:03, that container is going to get loaded in onto your particular truck, and we can get you in and out of there because of the direct connections and the dedicated lanes in, I'm making this up, 1/5 the amount of time in a much more reliable situation than what your experience would be historically. And over time, we will build that particular relationship. So, for example, I'm not needing a whole bunch of technology added to that truck or cost for that operator. This is why we're putting cameras and edge computing for those cameras. So in the background, you have a red truck over your right shoulder. Let's say it's an individual operator. We may be using its GPS system that maybe could be integrated in the information system. Maybe it's the license certification number on the vehicle. Maybe it's the license plate. Whatever mechanism is needed for the information, that vehicle is now recorded like an air traffic controller recording an airplane. So in the beginning, I'm sure as we crawl, walk, run, only certain devices will be able to be met. We're going to have to need your GPS or your communication system or something. But as we move forward, we hope to have such a robust information system to create the smart port of the future that particular driver can be so much more productive with their time in reducing delay by creating dedicated lanes, by eliminating horrible weave movements, by horrible queues and congestions that occur. Now, what do we get? We get a safer system, a better gross domestic product, a more efficient port, less diesel emissions, then what we would have is a whole bunch of trucks are queuing on hot Texas days, running their air conditioner or their pony engine. So there's a whole bunch of public sector and private sector benefits that we can sell to a whole host of parties to really push where data and technology can take us. But wouldn't it be really cool for that red truck to know, if I get there between 8 and 9 o'clock, I may be able to save a half a day of wasted time that I would have had otherwise with regard to this particular situation. Or, hey, I can't pick up my container on Monday morning, but I can pick it up on Tuesday morning. Hey, that helps us a lot because we know exactly where to put your container when we know exactly when you're going to be here.
Michael Morris of the North Central Texas Council of Governments. So that's the technology end. But some parts of the Smart Port involve things that are much more traditional. For example, the Smart Port Coalition pursued and received a grant from the federal government that will build a flyover, essentially a viaduct, to enable large trucks to get from one part of the facility to another without engaging in city traffic. That's especially important because one part of that crossing now involves trucks crossing multiple lanes of traffic in a very short space in order to make a necessary turn into part of the complex. Morris offered some detail on the problem and how the flyover and associated infrastructure addresses that.
So if you come off of the freeway system onto Haslett Parkway, you come in on the center of the thoroughfare street. We have a north-south facility that goes up to the Burlington Northern Alliance Airport, very close proximity to the interstate highway. If you wanted all of these trucks, I mean, you're sensitive to the geometric elements of how a truck operates. One thing it doesn't really do well in a short distance, especially to a blinded driver, is to move over several lanes to get into that right turn lane in order to make that turn into the intermodal north-south thoroughfare street. So one of the items, since there are so many lifts and the facility is going to grow so much, we basically grade separated that movement. So the vehicles coming off of 170 and the vehicles coming off the interstate highway, they get on the thoroughfare street. If they wish to move to the intermodal facility, they have a dedicated, what we call a direct connector, where they grade separate over that horrible movement that would have to be made by moving across those lanes in a short distance. You can imagine trucks skewed at a 45-degree angle, blocking lanes, waiting for the light to turn green.
That was Michael Morris of the North Central Texas Council of Governments talking about how a flyover that's being built in the Fort Worth, Texas area would facilitate the movement of trucks as part of the Smart Port plan being implemented there. We'll have more of my conversation with Morris and with Nick Conan of the development company Hillwood about the Smart Port project after a short break. That includes a conversation about a major federal grant that's being used to help build the flyover, as well as how they think the project in Texas could be used as a model for other ports and intermodal facilities across the nation. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. A coalition of groups in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is working to take the Alliance Texas development and turn it into something more, a smart port, using technology and infrastructure to increase efficiency in the movement of freight through the various facilities that make up the complex. The problem is not an easy one, as Alliance, Texas is made up of an industrial airport, a major intermodal rail hub, a significant number of trucks, and up to 14 million square feet of warehouse space, and all of it right next to Interstate 35, a major north-south freight corridor. Before the break, Michael Morris was talking about how a proposed flyover would eliminate traffic problems at the facility. Truckers moving from one part of the complex to another having to cross several lanes of traffic in order to make a turn into another part of the complex. And he says that fixing that is all about reducing the time involved for the truckers who work in the area.
We made that seamlessly for the truck movement, because the value of time is so great in our trucking community. So they can stay straight, have their own dedicated, grade separated movement, land onto the north-south thoroughfare street that goes to Nick's complex. And to help, we're now widening that particular thoroughfare street and now created a dedicated queue lane, dedicated truck lane, dedicated facility where we now are going to work on the technology that those vehicles lined up to enter the port to pick up their delivery that Nick is managing. We can do it in a way using information technology to line up those that are ready to pick up their particular container in sort of our hope to be this just-in-time delivery. So we can efficiently unload a train, in theory, either store it or put it onto its truck component, so it doesn't have to be moved 6, 8, 10 times for that particular truck to be at the right location. So it starts with a clear signal to the truck driver and the truck company. You have priority in this particular part of the world because of the efficiency we wish to gain out of the smart port, which you're in the shadow of, and an $80 million commitment of direct access over a 50-year design life. It's the least we can do to not have a particular queue problem in that short distance between the interstate highway and the north-south thoroughfare street.
To build that flyover, the various governments, corporations, railroads, and others involved needed some heavy funding, so they joined forces to apply for a federal grant, and they received one for $80 million. Nick Conan says that was a key piece of the puzzle.
But most importantly is, of course, our grant application that we were all party to, which was which we received $80 million specifically for the construction of a flyover connection from SH-170 over I-35 and connecting into Intermodal Parkway, which I'm happy to go into more detail about that. But really, that was the main spearhead of that coalition, although there's other reasons, of course, to have that coalition for all the other ancillary elements too, but that was the main heart of it, was for that grant application and for that surface transportation expansion work that, again, we successfully received through the infra grant application with which we submitted.
Michael Morris says the partnership that applied for and received that $80 million grant for the flyover, involving so many different entities, and the way it is successfully approaching and accomplishing the various goals involved in bringing the smart port together is also part of what makes it a good model that other ports in entirely different parts of the country could emulate.
Our partners work seamlessly on a whole host of items: public, private sector, the council of governments, our body, the Regional Transportation Council, local governments, innovative technology companies, 5G, all the different elements that we're going to go in and look at this particular project. I believe that's why this particular project will showcase to all other ports, regular, Port of Houston, Savannah, anyone that's moving goods movement using trucks, we are going to be able to demonstrate, because of the relationship you just flagged, we seamlessly can work together in an integrated fashion and basically complete each other's sentences because we believe in the outcomes that we're working on. So most weaknesses is the coalition that you just described needed to do something like this in most regions difficult to put together. That is our strength. And that is why I think we're going to be able to demonstrate to our nation what it takes to seamlessly integrate next generation smart port, from technology to information to just-in-time pickup to reliability to redundancy and network capabilities as part of that particular effort.
And if some of those other ports want to see how it works as it's happening, the Smart Port project at Alliance, Texas is moving forward. And as Michael Morris says, it's ultimately about understanding a concept that all truckers understand, that the freight doesn't move without the truck, and then making the trucks the priority that they're supposed to be.
I think we're going to be hanging, different technology on our technology elements in the infrastructure that we can't even imagine today. And I think we're going to be using artificial intelligence elements that we can't even think of now that will really be value added to the process. At some point, us humans, we don't really like to work at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I believe that, we're not getting all the capacity out of our roadway system, because most people like to work and commute in the morning and in the afternoon. And sometimes you could land an airplane on our roadways at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think over time, one of the big gains you're going to see at intermodal facilities is the role of technology in maximizing throughput for more hours of the day. So let's say that independent operator doesn't want to come up and pick up his load at 3 in the morning. There could be equipment during the night getting that load ready to be picked up in a very efficient manner that there's no humans or very few humans working on at those hours of the day. And this isn't about creating more technology to reduce humans. This is actually about increasing the productivity of humans and telling the independent truck driver and the goods movement community.
For Landline Now, I'm Mark Reddick. If you want to make your voice heard on any of the issues we discuss here on the show, you should call your representative and both of your U.S. senators. To call any member of Congress, all you have to do is dial the U.S. Capitol switchboard. That phone number is 202-224-3121. Provide the operator your zip code and they can connect you directly to the office of both of your senators and your U.S. congressman. Again, that phone number is 202-224-3121. You can also make contact with those lawmakers by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. At that website, go to the button that says Contact Your Representatives. On the right side of that page, you can compose an email and send it to the people who represent you in the House and Senate. Meanwhile, if you want to contact your state officials about an issue closer to home, you can get their contact information through that same website, fightingfortruckers.com. Again, go to the link that says Contact Your Representatives, then scroll to the bottom of the page and enter your zip code and click Continue. That'll bring you a list of your elected representatives at the federal and state level with links to their contact information. Again, you can find all of that at the website fightingfortruckers.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.